All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rust Gamedev Meetup for May 2022. And so, if you're here, hopefully you're here for the Rust programming language and not for the Rust game. But we are talking about game development in the Rust language. And so, you got some pretty cool products to show off today. We run this meetup every month and try to give an opportunity to people to show off what they've been working on. And so let me know what's been going on this month. If you mention stuff in chat, then I'll mention it on the stream here. A little bit for about what I've been doing. Oh, I have the Chrome at full screen here. But if I bring over my VS Code, I've been so there's this game that I played on the Palm Pilot like 20 years ago. No, I didn't play it 20 years ago. It came out 20 years ago. I played it like 10 years ago. I had an old Palm Pilot. It's called Space Traders. And I found out recently that the original C code for it is open source, and so I'm going through and rewriting it in Rust, and I'm having like a great time. It's surprising how much is like easily translatable directly from C to Rust. But then I also have to take into consideration the fact that like C has like this C project just has a ton of header files with globals and everything like that, and so I'm kind of rethinking how global state works. But then once I have the code switched over, one thing I want to try and do is kind of like add some more of my own game design flair to it, and kind of just think about what kind of stuff would be cool. And so if you look at Toki, we can see there's like about 14,000 lines of C. I'm pretty far in, but I think that a lot of this is commons. I'm using Copilot a lot to like rewrite pretty general stuff. And so as an example here, in the C version, there would be like a definition of a lot of different things in like almost like a config form, and so I get Copilot to like rewrite that in a Rust way for me, which is really cool. And I've also been like working on restructuring a lot of it, and so let's see if I can just drop this down. The C project, everything is all in the same level and everything like that. And I can kind of go through and rethink a lot of the structure, which is definitely a lot of fun. And on top of that, there's a surprising amount that I'm learning from doing this. And so in going through, there's like a lot of stuff that is like, to express this, I don't really have, like the way I'm doing it right now isn't the cleanest. Like one example of this is the config for each of like these different types of politics, I suppose, and like what it gives. I'm just creating some method on the type, and then matching to return stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, well, would this fit better in a config file, or would this fit better in this sort of format? And so anyways, I've been having a lot of fun with this, kind of just working through it on weekends. Translating over goes pretty quick, and then hopefully in a future month I can come and show this off as a completed project. But that being said, do let me know what you've been working on, so that I can give you shout outs. I will be keeping an eye on the chat as we go through the different show and tells today. And so yeah, we'll see how that goes. And so for our agenda, we have 4 different items. We have Carlo, who's going to talk to us about their RustConf arcade cabinet, which is super cool. Test Load is going to be talking about a puzzle platformer that they're working on. I'll be talking a little bit about Valerian stuff. And we have Kevin, who will be giving us an update on Graphite. So we will be back in just a second with the first talk. All right. Hello, Carlo. So I saw this in the Rust Gamedev newsletter, which just dropped this morning. And I'm super excited to hear about what you're doing with this arcade cabinet. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a cabinet that this is a project I've been working on for about a month now. I was reaching out to one of the organizers of RustConf, and I was sharing this idea, and I was working on the design. And just last week, we confirmed that this is going to be officially there. So this will be at RustConf in Portland in August. And my plan is to load it up with games made with Rust by people in the community. And it's a chance for developers to show off their games to the broader Rust community. So I can get into the design a little bit here. So this is this is just a Windows PC. That was the plan. It's basically my old PC. I'm transplanting in here. It's going to have a GTX 1080 and a Ryzen 7. So hopefully it'll be able to run whatever people throw at it. It's going to be using a iPac game controller. So this is just a way to connect things like joysticks and buttons to a USB port, and it should read like a gamepad. I have to test that, and I'll make sure to communicate that to interested developers when I figure that out. It's gonna have sound. I have some speakers up here, and for the construction, it's gonna be made out of 18 gauge cold rolled carbon steel, and I plan on. I'm currently trying to reach out to local artists, but for like vinyl stickers or something. I think it'd be cool to have like some like kind of metal Ferris artwork to put on here. But I haven't found anyone yet. If you know anyone, or if there's anyone in the community that would be up to a task like that, that'd be really cool. And but I'm still looking out, and might just go on Fiverr and find someone who's willing to do it. So for the inputs, the panel here. Right now, this is for a joystick and 6 buttons, but if your game can't work with that, feel free to still submit it, because this is pretty easily swappable. So if it makes sense to maybe have something that maybe has like an analog stick or something with some other kind of input, I might schedule like a swap for the input panel so it can get another type of game, another group of games that can be played. So yeah, don't worry about submitting that. And speaking of that, submitting games, I have a tweet here. I'm at Carlos Sapina on Twitter, and in this tweet thread I sort of announced the project, and there's a link to a Google form here if you want to show that you're interested in having your game on this. Let's see. Yeah, so I guess we'll go over the timeline quick. So right now I'm gathering interest through that Google form. So far there's been 6 games submitted on top of my own. I'd love to see more submitted. Don't have to be completed projects. Don't have to commit to anything yet, because I know. But just if you're at all interested in getting a game on this, put there, and I'll contact you later with information about how we can get it compatible. So for the timeline, continuing that. My plan design's pretty much done at this point. I'm just kind of triple checking all of the dimensions before I get it fabricated. I plan to have all the parts in my hand by the end of the week, and I'm going to start assembling it. And then after that, after it's assembled, I'm going to start reaching out to developers that have shown interest with more instructions on how to get their games playable. I plan on writing a Bevy plugin, which will hopefully make it super easy for Bevy games to be played. And I'll also write a guide on just how to more generally make a game compatible with the input controller. And then the last week of July is when I'm going to ship this to Portland. So that's sort of the deadline. I'll make sure to get a harder date on that once I know more about what I'm doing for that. So I do have a few stretch goals. Right now, I'm trying to just modularize the task. So right now I have this completed. I'm going to get this fabricated and functional. But the stretch goal, I've been asking on that forum if their game has local multiplayer. And that's because one of my stretch goals is to basically duplicate the display and input into another cabinet and basically have them connected as like a duplicated display. And so you can have multiplayer games playable at the conference. So that's one of my stretch goals. I have a few others that I don't really want to share quite yet because I'm just not sure. They're going to require a lot more work and might not be doable by RustConf, but I definitely have other things in the back of my head that I would like to do. But the nice thing about this is that I'm going to still have this after RustConf, so I can keep iterating on it, adding more of these stretch goals I have as I want to bring it to a lot more conferences than just RustConf. So I'm hoping this will be a lasting project. And I guess last thing I have is, let me go back to my tweet thread here. This is going to be a really expensive project. So if you'd like to support it, I am on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Metalmancy. I'm sort of in the process of a rebrand right now. So if you see Micronote and Metalmancy, it's sort of what I'm changing to. And also, The other thing is on YouTube, I am Micronote, and I plan on posting some videos about the build process and about this project. So I think that covers everything. Yeah, so that's the project.
Nice. Yeah, so this is super duper cool. I think a few things that I'm curious about. So to get a game on, do you have any restrictions of if it has to be like open source, or like how the binary gets to you? Does it have to like run on Linux, or what kind of stuff do we have here?
Right now, the only I don't I'm letting all games on open source. I think I put that as a required question initially to like post a link to the source code, but I don't think that's necessary. I think what I was hoping for is if they are open source, that means I can probably assist developers more in getting it compatible. But if it's not, and you just have to accept that you're kind of on your own getting your game working. So that's the only thing. I don't mind if it's open or closed source at this point. I understand why not everyone wants to have their game open source. Yeah, and it is going to be running Windows right now. Obviously, I can change that, but that just, I feel like, at least with this thing, I think it's going to be the easiest to get working. But that's perhaps subject to change if it makes more sense. I'll ask developers about that if they have any. Maybe if it would work better for them to be on Linux. I definitely am open to it. Yeah.
Nice. And sort of adding on to that a little bit, you described that like you described earlier, that the entire thing has like Rust through and through. And so from like the software to the hardware, like what are the different steps in putting this together?
Yeah, so I'll start with the hardware. I mean, the only thing right now that I am considering is for the LEDs. So all these buttons have LEDs built in. I don't know if I have one here. Actually, I'm
just gonna change our screen.
Yeah. I'll share you.
Yeah, there we go. So now we can see it a bit bigger.
Yeah, so I have like a little microcontroller here this is an STM32 microcontroller. So I was gonna make some sort of interface to program those LEDs, and my goal is to do that with Rust. I know it's probably at this point with my skills to be easier to do it in something else, but I definitely want to be in Rust because it just would be wrong if it wasn't. So I'm gonna make some sort of way to program the LEDs with those, and some way to interact with those in the game. I've done that in Python before, similar things. So hopefully I'll be able to. It shouldn't be too hard to do with Rust since I'm more experienced with that now. But yeah. So I want this whole thing to be, and obviously it's made out of metal too, because metal rusts, and it's at RustConf, so that's pretty good. Could be made out of wood. That would just feel wrong too.
Yeah. And so I think so you described that like we have like you want to like do LEDs in Rust, and you want to like try to do as much as possible in Rust. And so what would it look like if someone wanted to help out with a portion of it? And so, for example, like I really like the idea of doing some embedded stuff with the LEDs. Like, how could I get involved?
Yeah, I'm probably going to start a organization on GitHub for that soon. So I guess look out for that, because I'm going to put some kind of, I know we talked about this before the show, but we need some kind of game selector. It sounds like Airshipper might work well for that. So I'm probably going to make a organization for that, and put the software for the LEDs on there, and put the Bevy plugin under there. So yeah, I'd look out for that. And I guess the other way to get involved is just if I'm gonna want some sort of have some sort of knowledge base for getting games compatible with it, to just help people write. So if you figure out how to get your game on here compatible quick when we get it working, and would like to write a guide on how to do that, that would be extremely helpful and appreciated. But yeah, there'll be plenty of ways to get involved. This is going to be a lot of work, so I imagine I'll be looking for that in the future for people interested in helping out.
Nice. Yeah, I think I definitely like the idea of the org, and then potentially like a Discord server to like discuss some stuff on it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then just for context, before the show, we were talking about like what a launcher might look like, and I mentioned like, so Valerian, we use Airshipper, which is like a launcher that we created, but I was thinking like it'd probably be pretty easy to repurpose a lot of it. But I do like this idea of like, if it could be just an experience where you don't see the desktop, you're just able to like start games and exit games really nicely, then that would be super cool.
Yeah, I do have this IO port panel on this. I hope to not use this, but this lifts up and reveals the you can plug in like a keyboard. But I think that just really take away from the arcade experience. But I want it to be fully, when it's at RustConf, fully controlled through the inputs here, unless there's like an emergency. So that's the plan. Oh, I guess the other thing I wanted to mention is I want to make sure to mention this, is that there won't be a wired internet connection. So one limitation on games is that if your game heavily relies on internet or can't be played without a network connection, that might be more difficult. I do plan on having a network card, but at these conferences you never know like what the quality of that will be anyway. So I guess that's the only kind of restriction at this point. Is I guess don't expect a super robust internet connection, because it is going to be a wireless there. So yeah, nice. I want to make sure I mention that.
For sure. Yeah, I think I'll reach out to you after, because I want to try and like get some stuff written down of like just like just in general what the full scope of it is, and so that'd be really cool. Absolutely. All right. And so anything else you want to mention before we finish off here?
I think that's it. I guess the only thing is, I guess if you're looking for more updates, just again, I'm planning on posting videos of the progress on my YouTube channel, and I also am kind of starting on a Bevy series. I have a little bit recorded of that, so expect more. There's been a lot of Python content in the past, but expect more Rust on this channel in the future. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Also, I hope to see you here. So I guess beginning of June. I hope we can see you here with some updates on the cabinet. That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Yep.
All right, hello. We are back with Tessalode, who is going to be showing us some stuff that they've been working on for a puzzle platformer. So I will let you take it away, Tessalode.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how many of you have played Picross or Nonograms, but I am making a puzzle platformer where you solve Picross puzzles, and then that acts as the terrain that you use like for a platformer. So I will show some basic puzzles first, and I don't remember what they're called. I'm gonna look it up really quick. Okay, so I don't remember how to solve this one because it's been a while since I looked at it. But basically, here's the rules. In this column, you can only have one block filled in, and then the same in the second column. Here you have to have 5, and then in this row you have to have 3. And it's not just, you can't just put 5 in random places. They all have to be in one group. Otherwise that would be a group of 3 and a group of 2. So for a puzzle like this, you might do something like this, right? So now we've solved the Picross puzzle, but I can't get to the door. So instead, I might choose to do something more like this. So this satisfies the constraints of the Picross puzzle, but it also lets you get to the door. So that's essentially the idea. Also, this door doesn't actually do anything. But that's essentially the idea of this. I'll show a couple other puzzles before I move on to the next thing. Yeah.
I just want to say, this is like a beautiful way of combining two different, quite separate genres. Like this is something that I would do with pen and paper, and you turn it into a platformer. That's super cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, usually it's just like the Picross part, and you're it's about like trying to uncover all the correct tiles, but this is a little different. So in this one, we've got lots of 3s, and the most intuitive way to solve the puzzle is just to make a staircase like this. But the problem is you can't get to the door. So I don't know if I want to spoil the solution, but I think you get the idea of what this is. I will also show that I have another gimmick. So there are also color Picross puzzles where you can fill in multiple colors and the hints have different colors. So I've done my own take on this where there's different kinds of tiles you have to place. So these are spike tiles. So I have to fill this column with spikes. And if I do that, when I touch the spikes, I die. So now I have to actually traverse around the spikes. So what I could do, for instance, is make like a little staircase like this, and then just jump over the spikes and get to the door. So that's another idea I have. So this was like the first I guess I'll leave this here so I have something to show on the screen. But this was the first iteration of this idea, where I just have these very constrained individual puzzles. So the next thing that I tried was connecting all of these puzzles into a cohesive world, and eventually like trying to make like a Metroidvania out of it. So that's what this is what that looks like. So here I've got a larger world with multiple puzzles in it, and I can edit one puzzle at a time. So I will spoil some solutions, sorry. So I made like this little corridor you have to go up. And then here I've got an orb, and if you put the orb into this receptacle, it opens a door. So gotta do something like this. And then you have to change the puzzle again so you can get back through it. And then these are lasers. If you touch them, you die. So you block it with terrain. And then this one you block with 3, but that's not enough. So then you stand here, change the puzzle, you go through. And then there's another puzzle which combines both of these. Yeah, I'll show it off because it's cool. So you get the orb. And then when you put the orb in the thingy, it closes this door. And then now that the door is closed, it's already blocking the lasers, so you don't need these blocks to block the lasers, so you can make a staircase over here. So that's iteration 2, where it's got the puzzles connected in one world. Now, one thing I would like to do that I haven't tried yet is to have puzzles where you like take elements from later puzzles and bring them back to earlier ones. So I could make a world that like loops back around, and maybe you have to take this orb somehow and like bring it to an earlier puzzle for a different solution. So I haven't done that yet, but that is one thing I'd like to try. So the iteration I'm doing now is I want to figure out how to present this idea. I've proven to myself that I can make puzzles in a Metroidvania kind of world. So I feel good about that. But right now it is very blocky, and I want something more presentable. So I'm doing a couple different experiments in terms of the art. One experiment was my friend recommended that maybe the game could have like a paper, like a pencil on paper style to it. So just as a quick test, I wanted to see if I could make the game look like it was drawn on a piece of paper, and like maybe it's like a frame by frame animation. So I don't know if you can see it very well, but there is a paper texture overlaid on everything, and it is shifting around at 12 frames per second. So it kind of looks like it was all drawn, like each frame of this was drawn on a different piece of paper. Or at least that's what I'm going for. It doesn't look exactly like that, but I think it kind of works. I don't know how well you can see it on the stream because it's kind of subtle, so the bitrate might mess that up. But that's one idea. And now the second idea that I'm going for is I want, how do I explain this? I want the world to feel, I want to use graphics that like represent like some kind of environment. So for this experiment, I'm not using pencil art. I'm just using some pixel art because that's what was easy to find in the world of free game assets. And I don't have this implemented in Engine yet, but I'll show you kind of what I'm thinking of. So I set up some auto tiling rules in LDTK, and I'm using like these forest tiles. So here I've recreated a couple of the puzzles I showed you before, but I'm just trying to integrate them into a world. So here we've got that same corridor puzzle as before, but now instead of like just an abstract alcove thing, now we've got a tree branch to jump on. And then this is like the staircase looking one, where you have to solve it 2 different ways. So LDTK is pretty nice so far because it has a really ergonomic interface for setting up auto tiling rules. So I can just place tiles and it'll put foliage down for me. And I would like to implement this in Engine so that when you're filling in a puzzle, it'll auto tile what you fill in. So you would like do this, and then you'd change to like this, and then this block would automatically connect to this terrain. And then I guess if you're doing the staircase, it'll like connect everything decently. So that's kind of what I'm trying to go for next. Which does make things more challenging, actually, because now I have to think about how I can contextualize these puzzles in an environment. It doesn't so if I wanted to do like laser puzzles, I'm not sure how I would do that in a forest. So that'd make more sense in a factory. But there are some like mechanical tiles in this tile set, but they're not like as robust. So this is going to be like probably kind of a challenge, just like trying to make something work with free assets. But that's the idea I'm going for. I want to try to make this more of a environment and not just abstract rectangles. So that's my progress. And if anybody has suggestions on where I should go with this next, I'm open to that because I'm kind of just experimenting.
Yeah, I think one thing I've seen a little bit in chat here is sort of people definitely saying like how it's great that you've expanded from like the simple idea and like the complexity of making puzzle games is like pretty high. And so I think one of the things I noticed as well is like there's like a breaking the fourth wall sort of like in like the first few puzzles you showed where you have your grid and you jump out of the grid. And this reminds me of like Baba Zoo a little bit, and just games where you have to like start by thinking outside of the box. And I mean, when you had that one where you had like the column all in the middle, I'm like, okay, I have no idea how you'd get around it because I forgot the mechanic that you can jump outside of the bounds that I had put in my mind. And so, how do you go about designing like from scratch or just like getting initial ideas put together? Like how did parts of this form?
Well, I mean, my designing process so far has just been validating that the idea can work. So my first goal was to say, like, can I design any puzzles at all? So when you were looking at those first puzzles that were just on the grid, that was just me saying, like, can I design a Picross platformer puzzle? Like, is that possible? Can I come up with anything good? So I tried to start out with like simple things like, this is a puzzle where you have to arrange these platforms to make a staircase. Or here's one where maybe I can find multiple solutions to this puzzle and require you to do a weird solution. And then the next thing was, can I put them together into a world and have it work? Which I can. And now it's, can I make it look any good?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, I think that I sort of see the distinction between the real world map where you go through and you're playing like a world platformer versus a small little grid. Is that the small little grid seems like it would be perfect for discrete tutorials where you want to teach some mechanic, you want to show the player how they can navigate around the ecosystem, and is very reminiscent of playing this on paper. And so, I think that like when I saw that transition from this small grid to seeing it in a world, I'm like, oh wow, there's like a lot of very interesting sort of like connections between the two or ways that certain things will work?
Yeah, so I mean that is something I've been thinking of, because in a game like this you would need to teach people Picross, which is not trivial. So I mean, it would make sense. I mean, I have some ideas of how I would teach them without having to give them verbal instructions, right?
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
part of the reason why I have these numbers appearing on the bottom and the right to tell you what it is that you've actually drawn. Hopefully from there you can infer like what this means and then how it correlates to the hints. But yeah, I mean, I think... I think just having very simple puzzles to start with and some very simple like terrain traversal would be good enough for teaching the game. But I could also do something like maybe there's a puzzle that you solve that just arbitrarily opens a door. So you just worry about solving the puzzle and you don't worry about how it influences the platforming at first. I don't know if that's necessary, but it's possible to do that for sure.
Yeah, interesting. One person in chat mentions in a forest you could use a wall to block some sort of like animal attacker.
Wait, which chat is this? It's not in...
if you go to StreamYard, it's like we have like our comments.
Oh, hello. Hi, everybody. Super cool.
So I think it's the bottom one.
Paper BG. Yeah, that's what I figured. The compression would make it hard to see. And of course, you could use it to block some... Yeah. So, I mean, that'd be kind of similar to the lasers. And that's something that I haven't really started... okay. It's not something I started investigating yet. But there's no reason why a game like this couldn't have some alive creatures instead of just, like, static elements. So, yeah, you could have, like, a monster that... or something that comes and tries to eat you, but you gotta block it. Yeah, that's definitely valuable.
And now just like another side of things, going a bit more technical, what's the stack that you're using to build this?
So, I'm not actually super happy with it, but previously for my synesthetic shooter, I was using Tetra, which is just a little framework that's kind of like Love, but it's and also similar to GGEZ. It's built on STL. But the developer is no longer maintaining it for understandable reasons. So instead of relying on something that isn't going to get maintenance, I've kind of started making my own less good version of it. So I've made this little thing called Micro. I'm never going to release it because the point is that it's only for me. And it's just a very simple thing built on SDL. It's using Glow. It's just dealing with OpenGL directly. I've got some basic things, like you got a mesh struct. And it just does pretty standard OpenGL stuff. So that's what it is. Just I think janky little Tetra.
So even if it is janky, I think what I saw that it did really well is like when you are in the world and you press, I suppose, E to edit, the way that it shifts the camera onto a board. I was thinking like, oh, this takes like a decent amount of time to sort of like get this, like that you go into this instance of the board that you can now play on. And I was thinking it definitely felt like a more put together engine. So from the outside, there's no jank here at all. I think it's quite.
Oh yeah. I just mean like on the inside. It's not really jank. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like the work of like the engine work that I've been doing has not sparked joy. Yes. I just feel like it's very basic OpenGL and there's like nothing to get excited about there. So if anybody else wants to make a framework like Tetra, and so I don't have to, just let me know.
I feel like maintenance on Tetra, even if 17 cups of coffee isn't 17 cups of coffee isn't working on it right now, can still probably like happen a little bit, or like at least a fork of it or something. I'm not sure what like the underlying parts of the engine look like, but
yeah, I mean, I guess it would just be like a thing like, does anybody want to do that? Because I mean, if you look at GGEZ, I don't think there's actually much happening on it, even though it has 3 maintainers now.
So there's definitely a lot of fluctuations.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody would, because like it's also not something that it's not an exciting tech stack, right? SDL and OpenGL. That's not the cool Rust thing. That's lame and normal.
I think I don't know if I did SDL. I remember doing some C++ 2D engine back in like second year. If it's one of the big ones, it might be SDL. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff out there. I guess the reason you chose it is just because it has everything pretty complete at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's, from what I understand, it's one of the best C++ libraries out there. Like, it's very stable. It has the windowing and input and gamepad support. It's mature, so why not use it?
Yeah.
If I'm using, I mean, I guess if I wanted to use all the Rust ones, it would be like what, Winit and GilRS. But like with Winit, I ran into an issue where I couldn't. I don't think it provides a function to convert between key codes and scan codes, which you feel like you kind of need that if you're gonna have key codes and scan codes, right?
Yeah.
It's like the whole point. So there's that, and then GilRS, I actually don't know much about. Maybe it's, I don't know how well it supports gamepads.
Yeah, I'm checking out every game yet. I'm not too sure about like this part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely sounds like there's some space to be improved and some opportunity to have stuff worked on. So
yeah,
that is all
for
good.
this. I just wanted to do something simple that I know will work, because it's already weird enough that I'm writing this in Rust. I don't need to also use like all the weirdest, newest things. Like WGPU seems really cool. I just I feel like if I used it and then I need to write a weird shader, I'm not going to be able to find any documentation online on how to do it.
That's true. I think the way I look at it is that even if parts of the ecosystem aren't fully built out, like when, like with like the Gamedev and Rust Discord, whenever there's something that comes up, like you can probably get pretty good help. But I guess like there's a time that you'll go far enough out that you're blazing your own trail and you have to figure stuff out for yourself. In which case, just working on established stuff makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably not going to do anything crazy like graphically with a game like that, but
yeah, exactly. But still having like a good foundation is very helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So is there anything else that you want to mention before we finish off here?
No. If anybody has questions, I'll answer them. But
perfect.
I'll have to look at that GDC talk. Yeah, I could use resources on puzzle making, because I'm not I haven't done much of it really. So
there's definitely like GDC talks are like a really great way to expose. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you've like watched many, but I've watched like quite a few, and like one of my favorite ones of all time, of course, and I feel like this is a lot of people's favorites, but Will Fire Games, who made Overgrowth. Yes, Overgrowth. They had a talk on animation systems, and they recently open sourced their games code, and that talk is absolutely phenomenal. But
I should probably stop looking at. I should probably stop tunneling. Sorry.
Oh no! Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Actually, one more question before we head off. Someone asks, when can I play it?
It's not very presentable right now.
So sometime in the future.
Yeah, eventually.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, TeslaLoad, for coming out today, and I hope to see you here in the future to show off some updates.
Yeah, will do.
All right, hello again. So we're talking a little bit about Valerian, and so I don't remember the last time I showed stuff off, and I feel like I'm gonna. So I'll pull up the game here, and we'll take a look through some things. Let me put my password in first. Actually, I'll do single player just so I can like use my admin staff. But some of the interesting things that I want to talk about today is stuff like some of like the growth that we've seen recently and how we're handling certain things. And so, okay, this is loading. I'm just going to switch back over to Chrome, go to our Grafana. So this is open for anybody to check out. but we have like our gameplay stats and stuff like this. I'm gonna go to the last 7 days, I think is good. All right, so essentially there were some people making like YouTube videos on Valerian. Some people, I think there was like some other posts on other forums around the internet and stuff like that. But essentially, actually, let me do like last 30 days just so we can see. Over like the last month, we've seen, I guess we store data for about 2 weeks, but we've seen that we hit like peaks of like 57 players 2 weeks ago, and it's been steadily growing. And then once last week, we hit like 165 players. And by players, I mean like players online on the main game server that we have. And it's gone down a bit, but the current average is definitely significantly higher than before. We're at like 100 players online pretty consistently. And so like yesterday, Friday, we went up to 134. Today being a weekend, we'll probably see another spike. But the problem that comes with this is that our server is designed, well, I mean, we don't really, it's not really designed to handle anything. We try to handle as much as we can. And these numbers are approaching that as much as we can. And so what has been happening, as we can see with like the server ticks right here, is that, so this tracks how long like ticks happen on the back end. And we've been going from like, we wanted to keep it like around 33 milliseconds, and we've been going up into like 100 milliseconds like in like last week. Like at this peak right here, we're at like 184 sometime. Like, well, it says like 50 and 60, but it was a lot closer to like 100 for a lot of it. So we upgraded our game server to like a dedicated instance cloud server, and then we recently provisioned a dedicated server from Hetzner AX 101. So Hetzner has pretty good prices on servers. I want to go, actually no, I want dedicated AX line. So we were going to upgrade to this one right here, which gives us 16 threads, which are Zen 2 cores. And it was like $5 a month or €5 a month more than what we were currently paying, which was like 50 euros for the cloud server. But then we decided to upgrade to the AX 101. And some of the benefits with this is that it uses, so it's 32 threads, and it's running a Zen 3, or it's running Zen 3 cores. And it's quite powerful. And so what we've seen since we upgraded to it, and actually I'll just like zoom in on this area right here so we can see this is before we did the server, this is after we did the server. And after we can see that we're doing significantly better when we handle these player loads. And so another interesting thing, and we're writing some blog posts about this, there's some stuff to kind of like look at when it comes to optimization. And it's not, so one thing that we were discussing at last week's meeting was it's not just that we can throw more CPUs at the problem. Like we are quite multi-threaded. Like we can do like multi-core processing quite nicely. We use specs, and it gives us like a lot of really cool things. But we can see that even though we're like running close to the max that we want to, like our CPUs are not capping out. And so essentially we have this graph down here somewhere that is the parallel portion on multi-core, and we can see that it's like hanging around at like 0.25 to I guess like 0.4 of like the maximum potential that it can. So we want this to be a lot closer to like 75%. And so the way that we do this, and that the way that we've been like starting to, oh no, it's frozen. The way that we've been starting to try and fix parts of this is doing optimization and taking a look at where, oh good lord. Okay, we'll just exit the page. Oh, Chris Crump's alive. Hello, Grafana. Let's go back to the game server. Last 6 hours is fine, and we'll look at this system Gantt chart. And so this is the breakdown of like what ticks are doing. I'm going to stop updating so we can break it down a bit. And so essentially, when we look at this is like during a tick, what has to happen, and we see that there's a lot that is happening one after another. And then there's some areas here that we've looked through that are like, okay, physics has to happen before we like, so physics has to happen before the agent system runs. But then we look and see like, oh, the buff system there's like a lot that's going on here. Like, can we reduce this? Physics, I feel like physics has been the most heavily optimized part that we've done. And so there's a lot more low-hanging fruit. I did like a pretty cool stream last Sunday, in which we were like, okay, the data structure that we're using for like outcomes, like you fire an arrow at the tree, and once it hits the tree, it like causes a sound to happen or something like that. So the system we were using for that was just a vec of outcomes, and we changed it to an event bus, and it was pretty cool. I went through and like fixed some of that stuff on stream, or I didn't fix some of this. What I mean is I swapped out the data structure, and then we got it merged. And we don't have the best way of measuring how much it improves. We have a way that we can like test bots running on the server, sort of. And so we have like on my home server, I'd spawn like 100 or 200 bots, and what they just do is that they go to somewhere in the world and start moving around, but that doesn't necessarily represent everything that players do at all. It just represents loading in chunks. And so we need better ways to look at that. Yeah, so I think that is pretty good. Oh, another interesting thing is like we use like a lot of bandwidth, and thank goodness Hessner has free bandwidth for guaranteed bandwidth. I don't know if it specifies here, but yeah, we get basically like unlimited throughput, which means that even though we are sending stuff out at over 20 megabytes per second, then we do not have to worry about that. All right, so that's some cool stuff with the servers happening of recent, and I guess also like the player growth. When we were trying to solve this problem, we were like, okay, we can throw more hardware at the problem, have better cores. That means that like our ticks should be smaller because they can get to the part where they parallelize more quickly. So that's one way. We throw hardware at the problem. The second way is we do optimizations, and so we go in, we try to find every single thing that we can speed up, and try to get as many improvements as possible. And then the third way is work on distributing the game servers. And so we don't have a very good way right now to say, okay, you launched Valerian, which server do you want to play on? You can type in the server URL, but we don't have like a server browser. And so there's a few steps that we would need to take to be able to host multiple servers around the world. But this seems like the best way, because so right now our server is in Germany. If people are in NA like I am, the ping is like 130 milliseconds or something, which is not terrible. It's not super, well, not that I do like a lot of combat myself in game, but it's not super duper visible. But we definitely want ways to not only have like our own official infrastructure being able to be like just like geolocated, but then also be able to more easily see what like when communities are hosting servers that people can go and check those out. All right, so anyways, let's hop back into Valerian a little bit here. Now I don't have oh no, so this is like today's version. Merchant wants to trade with me. Oh, the merchant's got a lot. I'm very poor. Okay, can I kit debug? Now I know that having seen or like having done streams before. Okay, the bit rate when I don't move around isn't terrible, but I'm also gonna watch the YouTube so that I know when I'm doing some pretty horrible stuff. Okay, so let me equip my yes, okay, here. So now I can fly around. So I'll talk a little bit about what we have going on right now. Oh, no way. Oh, I was wondering if this feature got merged, and I'm like, it probably didn't, and I won't be able to build in time. But one thing that was going on of recent is LOD. So we have LOD train, which means that we can see the mountains off in the distance, and we don't have to render like a voxel for each thing in the mountain. But more recently, there has been a lot of I don't know how much work it is. I feel like it's a lot, but one of our developers got trees working in level of detail. So before, you wouldn't be able to see trees off in the distance, but now you can see trees past the border of your. One sec, let me just change my screen a little bit here. What did I say? You can see trees past the border of where you're rendering stuff. So for example, all these trees over here, or actually if I zoom in a little bit, so this is my chunk border. We got nice trees right here. We go a little bit further, and these are like low poly trees that we can see. All right, so when I saw this, it blew my mind, just because like our level of detail system, like it looks amazing in my opinion. Like just as it was, you can like in Minecraft you can't see mountains off in the distance, for example. But then without trees, without some like villages and stuff like that, then there was definitely a lot missing. But that being said, so I apologize for what is about to happen to the bitrate. I don't think YouTube's going to enjoy this very much. I'm just going to go to the top of the mountain and we're going to take a look at some of the stuff off in the distance. Oh wow, this is amazing. I did not think it would be merged this fast. But I think there was like a lot of people reviewing it, and it's definitely been an anticipated feature. All right, let's see. Hello. Okay. All right, so I don't think we're able to see the village we came from. I don't think that's part of the LOD system yet. But that being said, oh my goodness, the fact that like that lake over there, one second, time morning, just so it's not time day. I just want something that's not too cloudy. Oh my goodness, that is so cool. Okay, yeah, so I did not know that this had come out, but that's really, really neat. So as for other stuff that we're working on right now, there's definitely like a lot of larger systems. One of the really big things that I'm hoping gets released soon is modular weapons. This has been worked on for quite a while, and as far as I understand, it allows you to like customize weapons more. You like build weapons a little bit differently, but I'm not sure the full extent. I've not play tested it myself just yet. And then other than that, I'm trying to think of like what other stuff we have going on. I think some of our artists are working on like dragons and werevins and stuff like this. And wait, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Is it werevins? It might be. It's something similar to that. I saw some stuff in the blog recently. But that being said, oh yes, weather time. Someone mentioned in chat here. I know that I don't think rain is merged yet, and so like we should be I think that's a merge request that's open, but like weather in general definitely would be very cool. Also, it's a bit out of season right now, but skiing is being wyvern. Someone says, yes, that okay, wyvern. So skiing will be a thing. We got a little bit of skating ready, and so I hope for like next winter we can have some pretty cool stuff from that. I'm gonna try flying down here, but I feel like if I move my camera too much, then the bitrate is just gonna die. Oh wow, yeah, just like going into this like valley of trees is very, very nice. Yeah, and so I think that's like it for the big updates. No doubt I'm forgetting something. We have we have blog posts, and so you can go take a look at the other things that are being worked on. Stream looks high quality. Okay. If I was doing combat, it would definitely not be. I've definitely been told off by people on the core developer team of Valerian for like doing a release party with StreamYard and it not being like very clear, and it's like very blocky and stuff like that. Wow, this is very good. I'm incredibly impressed. Oh wow, there's a giant tree over here. Let's go take a look at that. Yeah, so of course, as always, if you want to try out the game, feel free to go download it. It's free, open source. We got like updates pretty much daily that you can check out, although we've changed it so that we only like release a new version every week so that people don't have to download new stuff every time. All right, I'm just gonna fly over there because I'm a bit faster like that. All right, giant tree should spawn in. Wow, very cool. All right. I mean, also, like, if you were not just like flying around like I am, then stuff would load in like much more nicely. And so if I go to the ground over here, once I get the chunks around me loaded in, then it just adds to be able to see like, okay, that mountain over there has trees on it. Ah, so good, so good. All right, so I will leave it here for today. And I saw someone mention in chat, yes, the Grafana dashboards are free for anybody to check out. Yeah, so we will be back in just a minute with the final talk of today. All right. Hello, Kevin. I don't see a screen share just yet.
Okay, let me start that now.
Oh, good. I'm excited to see what's been going on with Graphite. I remember last month True Doctor gave like a pretty intricate talk about some of the stuff going on in the type system and magic that's going on. So
Indeed.
Should be pretty cool. All right, there we go. I will let you get started.
Okay, awesome. So this is the update for the end of Sprint 14 for the Graphite project. If you're not familiar with Graphite, just a quick overview. The goal is to make a 2D graphics editor that can basically be the 2D counterpart to Blender, which is amazing at open source 3D, and we want to be amazing at open source 2D. So we can do both raster in the future, and currently we can do vector. So vector is good for illustration and graphic design. Raster will be great for photo editing. I'm very excited to edit my photos in Graphite in the future. Yesterday I went and photographed a rocket launch from SpaceX, which was very exciting. So I've had to do my editing in Photoshop right now, but I'm very much looking forward to when I can do that in Graphite. And we're actually going to start building out the raster system, some prototypes for it at least in the coming months. It'll still probably be longer than that until it's production ready. And then the cool thing is that it's also based on a node graph. So your layers are actually secretly nodes, and you can basically use them to make procedural and non-destructive content where your entire workflow involves not really making any destructive pixel edits, but you actually make kind of steps to your process where each thing that you do is itself a step. And therefore you can go back and make changes, and you never have to commit to any decisions. Here's a quick screenshot for anyone who wants to see what this will look like in the future. It's a mock-up of the future photo editing capabilities. And then this is what it also looks like with the node graph, or at least the current mock-up version. I'm sure it'll change a little bit before then, but we're beginning some implementation of that, the front-end aspect of this node graph. And I can show that off real quick, although we showed it off last month as well. So quickly going over some of the features from Sprint 14. We now have the ability for the text tool and the text system to load in your choice of over 1,400 fonts, which is taken from the Google Fonts library. And you can also choose different styles like bold or italic, any of them that are provided with a font. We also have, and actually maybe I should just show this off as we go. So I'm going to open up the editor. If you go to graphite.rs and then click launch, this brings you to editor.graphite.rs. And now you can just go to the text tool. So we had this before. And now we can actually go and edit in the properties panel. We can edit what text is contained here. So let's go and make that a new line. And then now let's also go and change the font. So we can scroll through this giant list. And I'm going to pick my favorite font, which is Montserrat. And I will now increase this to a bold italic, 900, the weight 900 instead of 100 as we had it before. Or we can just do bold, 900 bold, but not italic. So we have all these options available. And then let's, pick another random font. Let's see what this one looks like. Ooh, very wide. Let's try this one. That's interesting. That's fancy. Very detailed. So now actually I can go ahead and use the path tool and start editing this path, although it might be a little bit performance intensive trying to show all these points all at once. That might have been a bad idea. I think we have thousands and thousands and thousands of points from this font. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to go back to the presentation. So now that we have that ability to edit all these different properties of the fonts, including of the text, including the fonts, we also now can talk about the snapping system. So this has been improved significantly from before. It was very rudimentary before. I'm going to close that and then open it up again because that font was too heavy. So the snapping system, let's say I have some boxes and I'll make, a hexagon, and maybe I'll add some more text. And maybe just a line, I don't know. So now, as we drag things around, we have these lines that show up when there's a snapping candidate available nearby. So they start out faded out, but then they fade in before. So we had kind of that before, but now it actually draws the line to the point that it's snapping to, and it draws, in this case we saw there was like a little dot there showing that it snaps to this shape specifically. Previously they were just drawing all the way across the screen. Additionally, you can also edit the points and draw the points snapping to other points. So we can snap to this point, to this point. We can also snap to the points on other shapes. There, there. Also on these lines here. And you still get to see also the horizontal and vertical lines pointing out where they snap to. So yeah, that makes it much more user-friendly. We still have some improvements to do in the future, but this is a big improvement over what it was before. We now also have shape outlines and hover selection. So basically, if I hover over shapes before I click on them, it actually displays that outline, and that tells me that clicking on it will target the shape I intended to target instead of one that might be behind it. So this is a little ambiguous right now, but now I can actually see which one's going to be selected instead of just guessing. And also, if it's multiple are selected, they're also outlined. So that's very helpful. Nice quality of life improvement. We have the properties panel for artboard settings. So we can go and make an artboard. You just go to the artboard tool and you can drag your region. And now we can actually set the size. So let's say we want the dimensions to be 1920 by 1080. And this sets the actual intended height and width. And then we can also change the positioning. So we can go and move that to the left, like let's say negative 800. And negative 600. Whoops, no, negative 600. There we go. So also we can change the color of the background. So that's kind of fancy. And basically that just gives you nice control over your background. And then you can make another one. And now this one's white, but you could give it yet another different color. So you can basically have these different artboards to draw on. You can resize them as you want, either using the numbers or dragging them around. And then you can make art on each of them separately. Or if you want no artboards, you just want an infinite canvas, you can just go and delete all of them. And then after they're all deleted, they end up showing the infinite canvas. Okay, we now have the dialogue system. So we did a big refactor. Previously, all these dialogues, like if you go to About Graphite, this dialogue here was defined in JavaScript because this web front end is JavaScript based, but the back end that powers basically everything you see and all the interactions and all the business logic of the application, all that is built in Rust. So now all these dialogues are actually now provided by Rust through the layout system. And these the definitions for how the content is displayed, how the buttons are laid out, what the content of each button is, all of this is now sent over basically from Rust through the Serday library, which serializes it into JSON, and then we're able to convert that into native data types on the front end for display in the dialogue system. So one of those dialogues now is the new dialogue. So we can actually create a new document, and now we can finally name documents. This has been a long time coming. We have not been able to name documents. So test2, because I'm very creative, and I'm going to make it so it's not an infinite canvas, and I'm going to say it's a 400 by 400 canvas. So now we start out with this 400 by 400. We can make something here. We can also go to the artboard tool again and see that it's in fact 400 by 400 at the location 00. So that provides the nice ability to give our documents names. Test 100, because yeah. So now we can do that, and we could also save this file, and it would by default save out to the file of that name. So that's the next thing to show. We can actually go to File Export now. And so this document starts out being called untitled document, but if we go to test2, now this starts out by default being called test2, and we can choose if we want, as we had before, we had SVG export, but now we can also do PNG and JPEG export, and that's pretty cool. And you can also choose, for these bitmap based ones, you can choose a scale factor. So I'm going to do like 4x, so I'm exporting at 4 times the resolution of the canvas. So this is a 400 by 400 document, and if I now export it like this, we end up with a file, and this file is 840. Wait, no, sorry, it is. Oh, sorry, that is the size of this rectangle because we chose those bounds. But if we change the bounds instead to from all artwork, to, which is bounded by the artwork itself, to the artboard. Now if we export it, and we change the scale to 2, for example, now it's going to be 800 by 800. And we see it's an 800 by 800 file. Additionally, we could do it with multiple artboards. So if we put back these artboards and we export again, and set it to all artwork, this is going to bound it's going to take the bound of this stuff, which is just the artwork itself. I guess we don't really have an all artboards, but we should probably add that as well. Anyways, so those are the new dialogue systems. It's very cool. We can finally export as a bitmap file because previously we were only able to export as SVG, and you would have to use an external tool to do the conversion. Okay, that is the end of all the things to show. Additionally, we made a I'm very excited about it. It's a big improvement to upgrade from our JavaScript tooling, which is based upon the very messy NPM package ecosystem. But basically, we're using the Vue CLI 4 version, and that internally used Webpack 4, and we managed to upgrade that finally to Vue CLI 5, which uses Webpack 5. And that removed like dozens of security vulnerabilities that GitHub was always saying this 4 or 5 year out of date package that is a sub dependency of Vue CLI. It had tons of security vulnerabilities of critical status, which we had no ability to control. So we finally have some improvements there. I'd also just like to make a big shout out to Zero Hypercube for his prolific work on basically most of these features. It's very awesome that we've had so much work getting done this past month, and I'm excited for what's going to happen in the next coming months. I'd like to quickly point out that we have a new blog post that I wrote. Check it out at graphite.rs/blog. The topic of this blog post is basically sort of a discussion on the architecture for the distributed computing aspect of the Graphene runtime. So Graphene is the visual programming language that is the node graph system, basically. It is itself a node-based programming language or a visual programming language built out of Rust functions. So we can make all the individual functions in Rust, expose them as a function, and then put them into the node graph, and you can wire them together and basically use them in a very easy modular way. And additionally, it's meant to run on both CPU and GPU. So if you write your node for CPU, you can also usually very easily make it so it also works on a GPU if the algorithm, if the algorithm is designed to support that, basically. And you can then very easily actually distribute this across multiple GPUs and multiple CPUs using this Graphene runtime, which runs in a distributed context. So anyways, check that out. And please leave any comments that you have or any feedback, because we're looking for feedback from people who might have expertise in that field of sort of distributed computing or any of the nitty-gritty details of memory management and GPU and CPU based everything. Yeah, so check that out, and please leave some comments. And now a quick overview on some progress we've made. Nothing visual to show off, but in the node graph system, there's been some ongoing work to refactor the way that we internally store our vector shapes, and that is paving the way towards being able to support these in the node graph. That is in fact almost done, but should be merged in the coming days. And then finally, we have the work that True Doctor last month presented on. He's made some further progress getting it to run with no STD, which is helpful because GPUs don't support that. And now it also supports running a test node on the GPU. So basically that node is written in Rust, and then it's compiled with Rust GPU, which is Embark Studio's very cool Rust compiler for the GPU target. And True Doctor also made a upstream contribution to fix a bug that involved something involving zero types, or a zero-sized type bug. So that has unblocked that issue, and we are successfully able to run an algorithm on the GPU as a compute shader and get the results back, and then feed that into other nodes. So the next step basically for us in the next few months is basically integrating this research, these prototypes basically, into the actual Graphite backend and start connecting it up to the front end so we can then visually modify and wire together node graphs and kind of push it to its limits, see where we need to make some changes to the architecture, and generally just get it all working. And then after that point, we can then start connecting it up to replace the layer-based system that we currently have as a temporary measure. So yes, I would like to thank you all for watching, and please invite you to get involved on our Discord server, which is a very friendly community. Go to discord.graphite.rs, and that'll get you an invite. And also please check out the editor and also the blog post. So editor.graphite.rs is the editor. You can open that up in your browser within a second, and also check out the website, check out the blog, and tell us what you think. Thanks. Hope to see you on Discord.
Awesome. So I think I was checking out the editor the other day because I was talking, like I have this thing that I do with some friends every week. We kind of talk about like cool stuff that we see in tech, and we've been talking a lot about WebAssembly recently. And
yes.
So I mentioned Graphite, of course, because I'm like, oh, Graphite's really cool. It can be like you can run in your browser. But then also I went and looked at the WebAssembly for Graphite, and it's only like 600 kilobytes or something like that. And so I was sort of curious, and I wanted to ask, like, how is it this small? Like, how is it like so compact?
Well, I've taken a very, I guess, strict approach to when we're using libraries, deciding that it's acceptable to use libraries. So we don't actually pull in a ton of code. Most of our code is basically just our own, and I think we're up to maybe like 40 to 60, something in that range. I haven't looked recently. 40 to 60,000 lines of Rust code. And basically all of that compiles down, plus some libraries. We're using maybe a dozen libraries or so, plus a small number of their transitive dependencies, of course. And all of that combines to basically have a pretty small build size. And then, of course, we have the JavaScript aspect, which is its own kind of its own mess, and it's probably less than a kilobyte as well, or less than a megabyte as well. And those together are able to provide what I think is actually a pretty efficient and reasonably production-ready stack. It does a good job at, I think, performance, aside from that one issue of trying to display thousands and thousands of editable points earlier with that crazy font. And we definitely have optimizations to do, and things will speed up, especially once we have our own internal render engine. So we don't have to basically send a bunch of data as a string to the browser, and the browser has to parse that as an SVG and then render it. That's our main bottleneck right now. So the actual WebAssembly stack is quite efficient, and it does a really good job.
Nice. And I think on this topic a little bit, I'm definitely, like, I haven't read the blog post just yet, but I really like the sort of direction that it's going down. And so is this the first blog that you've put out?
We have two other announcement posts that were kind of just small things I wrote up because we needed to have posts, but this is the first like actual technical discussion, and it is our third blog post in total. So if you're interested in the technical details, and this is sort of more of a kind of an architectural planning, talking about what will happen in the future, at least as we currently anticipate it. Although I'm sure things will change as we get more towards the actual process of implementing it and learning what we don't know right now.
Nice.
But hopefully we'll do some more technical discussions and overviews of different pieces of the technology that's going to be involved in graphite and graphene.
I was sort of thinking about that because like last month when True Darker came out and talked about like some of like the type system stuff, I'm like, there's like a niche in game development that I haven't really like put like a meetup together for. Like we have the graphics meetup, we have the Gamedev meetup, but we don't really have like an algorithms meetup for game dev or like game dev adjacent stuff. And so like, for example, True Doctor could talk a lot about type system stuff that Graphite's using. It would be really cool to have Acton come in and talk about a lot of stuff that they're working on for like, I forget the exact Bonsai DB, I think it is. And then I'm just thinking like there's probably a lot of opportunity for people to come in and talk about the cool technical stuff that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, blog posts are great, of course, but we definitely need more opportunities to talk about them.
Yeah, Graphite's certainly on more of the tooling side of game dev. Of course, we're not building a game itself, but we have the capability to hopefully improve other people's lives building games. And we have certainly a lot of engineering challenges with many very complicated algorithms and entire many large puzzle pieces we have to put together and build. But yeah, indeed.
And then I also noticed that you're wearing a Graphite shirt, and so is this the one from GDC?
I didn't have it in time for GDC, but I do have it now. It arrived in the mail a couple days ago.
That's awesome. Did you just get like like one of them made for yourself, or do you have them for the team?
Yes.
Or
I sent some out to the team as well.
Nice.
Contributors.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. It's cool to have to be able to show it off and stuff like that. And I think that's like the one thing we don't think about open source very much is like the branding side, but I think that's something that Graphite's definitely doing pretty nicely. And so
we're a design tool, so it kind of matters.
Exactly. Yeah, it goes hand in hand.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Is there anything else you want
contribute
to
a bunch to
mention?
Graphite and get a free shirt.
Exactly.
Become a core team member.
Yeah, with open source, it's not as hard as you think. If you put it, if you want to start working on a project and helping out with it, yeah, that's what I found. It's like surprisingly easy to get into like core contributor status on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we actually had some comments recently from different people who were all independently pointed out that they thought that the Graphite community made it very easy compared to most other open source projects they've worked with to actually get involved and get started with issues and sort of jump into the code. Certainly we have some documentation and stuff that we would love to always add, but we definitely, I think, are reasonably approachable. The code base, being 40 to 60,000 lines, is actually still reasonably approachable, and Rust makes it easy to not screw up.
Exactly. I think just like adding on to a point you mentioned there is, if you feel like you don't have the technical ability to come in and work on a lot of stuff, like the fact that like every single project needs better documentation always means that you can 150% find something to do on any open source project. And like, I think that's like super valuable.
Yeah, even just reading the code, and as you learn from the code, actually a very good way to learn something is to try and understand it yourself and then explain it to other people. So if you actually read the code and then explain it by writing comments about what the code does, that's actually a very good way to learn it yourself and also improve the documentation at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, so definitely some exciting stuff there. Anything else you want to mention before we head off for today?
I don't think so.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Hope to see you here next month.
Yes, indeed. I'm definitely excited to see what Graphite gets up to. All right. So I'm just going to swap over to this screen here, and we're going to finish off with announcements for today. And so newsletter is out. For anybody who doesn't know, gamedev.rs. We got newsletter number 33 right here. We got the Rust Gamedev Meetup. That's us, represent. Also, so as Carlo mentioned, the Rust Conf arcade cabinet, some details there. I do want to mention next week we are having the second Rust Graphics Meetup. And so we have a few speakers so far. We have room for more speakers. And I don't know how long I'm aiming for it to be. I need to reach out to speakers and get some stuff organized. But the first one we had, I thought was phenomenal. And so I really want to definitely see more opportunities to give larger talks about graphics in Rust. So for that, again, if you go to the Gamedev newsletter, Rust Graphics Meetup 2, you can fill out a form and you can like just see like an example of one of the talks from last time. And so, and it's really like anything to do with graphics whatsoever. So there are some talks that are going to be like longer form, but there's also lightning talks. And so if you have something that you're like, I could talk about for 5 minutes, but it's not long enough that I want to like prepare like a very formal talk, then this is like I really want to have you there as well. And so definitely excited for this one. And that, I think it's next Saturday at this time. Actually, wait, let's see. 12. Okay, so it would start at the same time as the Rust Gamedev Meetup did this month. All right. So arcade cabinet. Do I have anything else? So that is it. So thank you for coming out to this month's Rust Gamedev Meetup. We'll head over to the Discord server for anybody who wants to stick around and chat. Just talk with any of the speakers, or just talk about what you've been working on. So with that, I will sign off for now, and we will see you next month.